Hello, I'm Louis Jett, WVU Extension Commercial Horticulture Specialist, and I'm at the WVU Horticulture Organic Farm in Midsummer, and we're going to talk about how to prune and trellis tomatoes. With tomatoes, there are two types of growth habits with this type of vegetable, which is very popular across West Virginia. One type that's commonly grown in the garden is what we call a determinate type tomato. This is a tomato that gets 3 to 4 feet high, maybe as high as 4.5 feet, and then stops growing vines and just produces fruit. So that's the varieties that we have in the field at the farm now. And these varieties typically reach maturity within 100 days after they've been seeded, and they will produce fruit for 4 to 6, maybe even as long as 8 weeks throughout the summer. The other type of tomatoes, which we'll show you later, are indeterminate tomatoes, which are tomatoes that grow very tall and require a much taller stake and a different type of trellising system than what we have for these determinate tomatoes. So with the determinate tomatoes that we have at the farm here, this is a variety called Celebrity, which is a very popular garden tomato. The tomato will get 48 to 55 inches high, and then they're typically put on a string weave type system for trellising. So tomatoes can be staked individually with a stake and string, but with this particular system where we have several hundred tomatoes growing here at the farm, the string weave system is commonly used. With the string weave system, either a metal post or a wooden post is placed every 4 to 5 plants, sometimes every 3rd plant, and then string is run every 6 to 10 inches up the length of the post, and the plant grows in between the 2 layers of string, and it keeps the plant vertical. Trellising tomatoes is extremely important because it keeps the tomato from laying on the ground, and it prevents the tomato from getting a lot of disease problems that it typically gets if it lays flat on the ground. So here we're using a trellising system that's keeping the plant upright, it's keeping it off the ground, but also we're mulching it with an organic mulch such as clean hay or straw to keep the soil from splashing onto the tomato when it rains. So this is an excellent way to keep the tomato upright, to have the plant intercept more sunlight so that it grows bigger and produces larger fruit, but also prevents many of the disease problems that we see of tomatoes, like early blight that's caused by rain splashed soil splashing up on the leaves from bare soil. So we're mulching, we're staking them. This is a successful way to grow tomatoes in West Virginia. Often in this high tunnel we grow tomatoes. In this particular case we're growing tomatoes for seed production. But I wanted to show this tomato that we're growing here and how we typically stake tomatoes or trellis tomatoes in a greenhouse or a high tunnel. Most of the older heirloom varieties that we use for seed production here at the farm are indeterminate tomatoes, which mean they continually produce leaves, vines, and flowers throughout the growing season. So these plants can be 7, 8, 9, even as high as 12 feet high. So they need a very high trellising system. So that's either using metal T-posts that are very high with a netted trellis, but what we do is we also use a string system with vine clips. So the tomato is just suspended on the string, and we use these clips to hold the tomato onto the string. So as the tomato gets taller and taller, we just keep clipping it to the string, and this keeps the tomato vertical, so it's easier for the plant to intercept light and to photosynthesize and to produce larger tomatoes. And it's also easier to harvest the tomatoes when we're harvesting them for fresh market, or in our case, we're harvesting them for seed production. Pruning of tomatoes is done to control the growth so that there's not excessive vine or leaf growth, and there's enough energy left for the plant to start producing fruit. So if we look closer at the plant, close to the ground, we see there's just a lot of side shoots, and these side shoots that are growing in the angles between the leaves and the main stem, these are the shoots that we want to remove. Preferably would like to remove them when they're less than 6 inches in length, but we do have some that are much longer than that right now, but I can go ahead and start removing them even at this stage. But you really don't want to start pruning a tomato until you see the first flower cluster on the vine, because you'll know how many shoots or suckers to remove from the vine. So we're going to start at the bottom of the plant, and we're going to remove this largest one first. And they just easily snap off, so I'd rather snap them off than cut them off. And actually, you could remove some of the leaves on this shoot, and this could be rooted into a new plant. So if there's enough time in the growing season to start a new plant, this can actually be propagated and put into a potting mix and grown as a new plant. But we're just going to go higher up on the plant and continue to remove these shoots that grow in between the axis of the main stem and the leaf. And so far we've removed 2, 3, 4, 5. As you go higher up on the plant, they're smaller. And then we're just going to keep this stem here, and we're going to keep this other stem. So we got 2 stems left on the plant. This stem, and then we have another stem that's growing to the side. Most garden tomato varieties are pruned to 2 stems. If you want it to be more aggressive with pruning, if you had a vigorous variety that's typically grown in the greenhouse, you could continue to remove the suckers above the flower cluster and control its growth. But for most garden varieties, removing that many shoots or suckers and keeping one below the first flower cluster, leaving you with 2 stems, is an excellent way to prune the tomato.